The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. The threat has evolved way beyond Afghanistan. Those of you in the intelligence committees, the Foreign Relations Committee, defense committees, you know well, we have to remain vigilant against the threats to the United States wherever they come from. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are in Yemen, Syria, Somalia, other places in Africa, in the Middle East, and beyond. And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. We're not going to ignore that either.
All right, guys, so as you can see there, that is President Joe Biden telling us that white supremacy is the biggest threat to this country, right? He even used it in the same sentence or the same breath, right, as ISIS, okay, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, right? So you would think that for all these claims that the left and the Democrat Party are making about how white supremacy is such a big threat to this country, even though, you know, I haven't really seen it, you would think that they would have some evidence to back up these claims, right? Some hard numbers, some numbers on hand, okay? Some facts they can cite when confronted about the threat of white supremacy, how bad it is, right? But as you guys know, like many of the Democrat conspiracies, for example, when it comes to the idea that black people aren't being allowed to vote, they don't have any data to ever back up these claims they make. And apparently, that is true when it comes to this Democrat conspiracy as well. As Mr. Greg Steube, a Republican representative, confronted Alejandro Mayorkas, the Department of Homeland Security chief, on how many cases involving white supremacy and domestic terrorism has he referred to the FBI. And none of you guys should be surprised by the answer or the lack of answer that this guy gives to this very simple question. Take a look.
That we just flushed out here. How many cases involving white supremacists and domestic terrorists have you referred to DOJ for prosecution?
Congressman, let me
simple. Do you not have the number? It's a simple number.
You've made some profoundly inaccurate statements that I would like the opportunity to correct.
I'm specifically asking you a question. You just clarified. Domestic terrorism is a threat to the homeland, #1 threat. And I'm asking you, how many referrals from Homeland Security have you made to DOJ for white supremacy or domestic terrorism?
Congressman, I will provide you with that information.
So you don't know?
Subsequent to this hearing. I do not have.
Can you name one case?
That statistic.
Can you name one case of a referral from DHS to DOJ for domestic terrorism?
Congressman, I will provide the data to you.
I'm asking you can't name one case.
And let me just say.
Okay, so you can't name one case yet. According to a new report from the U.S. Department of Justice, almost half of all the criminals prosecuted in federal courts in 2018 were aliens, charged with crimes ranging from drug trafficking to murder and to kidnapping, and the vast majority, 38,000, were illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. But it's still, domestic terrorism is the #1 cause of your concerns.
Yeah, so this guy, right, Alejandro Mayorkas, who is supposed to be in charge of the border, right? He's second in line after Kamala, which, I mean, really means that he's first, okay, because Kamala is checked out when it comes to the border. That's obviously an assignment she wants no real part of, okay? She is border czar in name only, okay? This guy is actually really running the whole border stuff, okay? So this guy is saying, no, it's not the people that come from outside of our border. That's not the greatest threat, right? It's actually people domestically. It is a white supremacy. And in fact, this dude was literally saying this 3 weeks ago.
And make the changes that drive to achieve equity, we have to be very mindful of the landscape on which we are working. We are working at a time when we are seeing only an increase in hate, or I should say perhaps only an increase in the hate that is rising to the surface. And what we in the Department of Homeland Security have assessed is that the greatest terrorism-related threat that we face in the homeland is the threat of domestic violent extremism. Individuals drawn to violence because of ideologies of hate or false narratives propagated on social media and other online platforms. And the most prominent threat is the threat of white supremacists.
Yeah, so according to this guy, right, the biggest threat to our country is white supremacists, okay, domestically, okay, as if, white supremacists, they were the people that committed the New York City subway attack, right? The guy that basically tried to shoot up people in the subway because, he hated white people, right? He don't like white folks, okay? Or, the guy, Daryl Brooks, that drove through a crowd of grandmas at a Christmas parade in Waukesha. Yeah, white supremacists. Those are the only threats that we need to worry about. That's not to say there's not white supremacists out there. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, if white supremacy is such a great threat, I'm simply not seeing it, right? I'm not seeing it personally. And if it's out there, the mainstream liberal media is not covering it, right? They're simply not covering it, which means that it must not be as prevalent as they're making it out to be. Because if it was, then the mainstream media would be covering it every single day. They'll be covering it all the time because they're desperate to cover that type of stuff. The same way that they are quick to cover a mass shooter who happens to be white, right? They're all on top of that, okay? Because that is their example of white supremacy. But you notice, again, they're not talking about that every day. They're still talking about January 6th because they don't have anything, right? They don't have anything. But ain't it crazy how, again, these people keep repeating this same talking point about how white supremacy is such a big threat and we need to look out for it, right? Because it's everywhere, right? This hate, okay? And they use this also to justify censorship too, by the way. This guy is partially responsible for creating Biden's Ministry of Truth, okay, which is designed to censor people on social media and online. But it's amazing how they push this propaganda so hard, but yet they don't have any facts and evidence to back up these claims. This dude can't give one statistic on how many cases of white supremacy and domestic terrorism that he's referred to the FBI. He can't give any numbers on that whatsoever. He can't name one case that he's referred to the FBI. You would think the guy would better name just one case, okay? I mean, if it's that big of a threat, you must be dealing with this stuff all the time, bro. Right? You have to be actively dealing with a case right now. Name one. He can't. Right? Again, that's not to say there's not any cases. But again, that's just to show you how exaggerated this is. Because all this is, guys, again, is a woke talking point for the Democrat Party. It is simply there to virtue signal. It doesn't mean anything. It's not supported by any facts and evidence. Again, just like the Democrats' talking point when it comes to how allegedly voter ID is racist and black people can't vote because of Republican election integrity laws. They can't give you one fact or statistic on how many black people have been kept from voting because of a GOP election integrity law. They can't give you one. The reason why they can't give you one is because they don't have any facts or evidence to back up those claims. They're just saying them, okay? They're just saying them. So, yeah, again, I'm not surprised at all to see that this guy can't answer the question. But, what's funny is that there was also another exchange I want to talk about that happened during a congressional hearing involving Mr. Mark Poeta, who used to work under the Trump administration, and Representative Hakeem Jeffries, who's a Democrat. And Mr. Jeffries asked Mr. Poeta for evidence that Democrats hate Clarence Thomas because he's a black conservative, and Mr. Poeta delivers spectacularly. Take a look.
And I believe, Mr. Paoletta, you've echoed a similar sentiment. I think your quote is, "Many on the left hate Justice Thomas because he is a black conservative who has never bowed to those who demand that he must think a certain way because of the color of his skin." What evidence do you have to support that incendiary charge?
When Chairman Benny Thompson calls him an Uncle Tom because of his views on voter ID and affirmative action, when in fact more black Americans support voter ID And with respect to affirmative action in college education, they're 62% opposed to it. So that is the most vile, disgusting thing you can say. And so, yes, that's the evidence. That's the evidence I just gave you.
Reclaiming my time.
Yes.
There are a lot of vile, disgusting things that can be
Well, you just
said.
asked me for an example.
The notion that is, right, when some members on this side of the aisle and others have been called the N-word throughout different points of our life, belies the point that you have a particular bias. And it's an overstatement, which is not surprising when you look at the balance of your testimony. And if Chairman Benny Thompson has an observation to make, he's entitled to free speech. You apparently believe that Jenny Thomas, regardless of how many conflicts she has, is entitled to her own political opinions as well.
Can I give you another example?
No.
That, guys, is a prime example why Democrats don't like facts and evidence, okay? Because when asked for facts and evidence, okay, the Republican gave facts and evidence to the Democrat, and the Democrat melted down, right? Because it's, oh my God, I can't believe you actually provided evidence that Democrats hate Clarence Thomas because he's a black conservative. Yeah, because this guy literally just said, look, the chairman of this committee, Benny Thompson, called Clarence Thomas a Uncle Tom because his views on vote ID and affirmative action. Which, I mean, is literally direct evidence that they don't like Clarence Thomas because he is a black conservative, right? That is direct evidence, okay? Quoted the guy. Now, again, instead of addressing the quote for what it is, right, this guy, Hakeem Jeffries, he melts down and he pulls the N-word card. Well, there's been members of the Democrat Party that have been called N-words out in public, as if that justifies calling Clarence Thomas an Uncle Tom, right? And then he tries to sum up Benny Thomas calling Clarence Thomas and Uncle Tom as if that's just a political opinion. Well, that's his right to free speech. And I agree with you. It is his right to free speech. Okay, but let's not sit and act like it's not out of bounds. It is free speech, but it is out of bounds. It is a slur. It is a racial slur. Because if a Republican called Ketanji Brown Jackson an N-word or some type of racial slur, then we all know that the Democrats will be breaking down in tears. They will be outraged, okay? They will be trying to expel that Republican from Congress, okay? He would have to resign if he did that. But when one of yours uses a racist slur, okay, even Benny Thomas is black, it's still a racist slur for them to say, oh, that's just political speech, right? What about Jenny Thomas, okay, who's not a part of the government, by the way? The Democrats love telling us we don't need to worry about people that are not part of the government when it comes to Hunter Biden, but that doesn't apply for Jenny Thomas. But what about Jenny Thomas? Right, she's entitled to her own free speech. So why is Benny Thompson not entitled to call Clarence Thomas an Uncle Tom? Right? You see how this goes, man? As always, guys, I just find the mental gymnastics that Democrats jump through to justify their hypocrisy to be absolutely fascinating, right? It really is. So, yeah, Democrats, again, when asked to provide facts and evidence, to support their outlandish woke claims, right, of white supremacy, they can't do it. But when they ask Republicans to provide evidence of their hate towards black conservatives, when they're presented with that evidence, they melt down. They can't stand it. They can't take it, right? It's almost as if they're allergic to facts and evidence. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.